Hey, I'm Brandon Laws, and this is Transform Your Workplace, the podcast where we break down the real issues leaders face and offer practical ways to build healthier, stronger, more resilient workplaces. Today's show is sponsored by Xenium HR, and if you've ever felt stuck managing payroll, HR, and benefits across different vendors, then you know how clunky and risky that can be. Xenium built a better way. Their complete HR plus payroll solution brings everything together in one seamless system, backed by a dedicated team that includes an HR business partner, payroll specialist, and benefits experts, plus a whole bunch of specialists behind them. It's one partner, one platform, and a safe place for your people operations. All right, in this episode today, I'm joined by my colleague, Nicole Blevins. She's a returning guest and a senior human resource business partner here at Xenium. And we're here to talk about one of the most viral and controversial workplace stories we've seen in a long time. A CEO and a chief people officer caught on camera in a very public scandal. Beyond the memes and headlines that we've all seen, this story raises big questions for HR and leadership about power dynamics, conflicts of interest, accountability, and what happens when culture isn't built on trust and objectivity. Nicole and I unpack what HR professionals and boards should do in situations like this, why outside partners can be crucial for objectivity, and what practical steps organizations can take to rebuild psychological safety and prevent toxic dynamics from festering. And as Nicole emphasizes in this podcast, sometimes it comes down to the courage to speak up when something just doesn't feel right. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Nicole Blevins. Nicole, it is so good to have you back on Transform Your Workplace.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited for today's episode. So there's this situation that many people know about that's happened, what do you think, 3 weeks ago? I've never seen a situation go so viral so fast with so many memes. And at first I thought it was a little funny. And then you start figuring out the facts behind it. And then it's a little sad and there's some other implications. And what I'm talking about here is there was a certain concert that a CEO was caught on the kiss cam with his chief people officer, allegedly having an affair.
Mhm.
And it was caught in such a public setting. It quickly went viral. And then the information, people recognizing these people, that's where it became very controversial, pretty sad too, when you think about family members possibly getting caught in the crossfire here too. So how did that situation, how did you respond to that?
Yeah, when I first saw it, I was shocked and my mind went into a million different places of HR already this negative perception a lot of times. And is this situation contributing to that? And just me having a lot of texts going off from everyone too, like friends that know that I work in HR reaching out to me and being like, what are your thoughts on this
Yeah.
situation? Like, what would you do if you are like an HR person in this situation or you're an employee that knows about this, and just asking me a ton of questions, which has really forced me to reflect on this probably more than I would have. And it does raise some very important questions about like power dynamics and
Yeah.
conflicts of interest and how should HR respond and how do we hold leadership accountable. And yeah, it like you said, it's just a really tough
It's
and
messy.
sad situation. It is messy, but it does also give us all a moment to like reflect on what does this mean for HR and for leaders in general.
There's 3 things that came up for me. You mentioned power dynamics. So the power dynamic between a CEO and people that report to that
HR.
CEO or
Yeah.
even a lower level employee. So that came up for me. And then the relationship HR has with the executive team, that came up as well. It's like HR should be neutral in a lot of ways, bridge between executive level and also the just regular employee, working for both of them. So that came up. And then just the ethics behind it all too. So if allegedly is having an affair, what does that say about you as a person and running a company as a CEO?
Yeah.
That's a big concern for me too. It's like I think they're a publicly traded organization.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what does that mean for shareholders?
Yeah.
And I think he got ousted too, or he had to
Yeah.
resign. But those things came up for me.
Yeah, there is so many things. Like I said, your mind just goes into so many different places and it's a lot to absorb. And you can also see why it's such a tricky situation for people within the organization too. of thinking through all of those things.
Yeah. I believe that, I don't know if it was a team event. There seemed to be another person there that was perhaps on the HR team
Yes. Yeah.
that likely knew about this situation. So that's another thing that comes up is like you have a lower level employee who might be aware of something like this happening. Clearly didn't come out until it became a very public thing. But when you know about something like this, like how do you raise the alarm bells inside of an organization?
Yeah. That was probably the number one question that I got from friends and just people reaching out to me is like, it appears in this situation that there was another HR person that like knew about this situation and this relationship. And like, if you are that person and you're in that situation, what would you do? And so that really generated conversation with these people that were reaching out to me about, yeah, it is a really tough position to be in when you know about the situation of your boss potentially having a relationship with their boss or the CEO of the company. It is a really uncomfortable and tricky thing to navigate. And it's hard because if you know of an issue with HR or your leader, typically you would go to the CEO, right? Or the next level of leadership, but that's not an option in this case. And so what I shared with them is the next option is that board of directors role, right?
Hmm.
There's a board and their role is to help select the CEO in a lot of cases and hold them accountable and look into things like this. That's one of the first things that came to my mind is if you can't go to that chief level
Yeah.
position, there's the board as well. And so reaching out to them to share like your concerns or what you've seen, and also having documentation is really important as it is in everything we do in HR. So just making sure that you are documenting what you're seeing or hearing so that you can provide all of that information to the appropriate person that's most positioned to really handle that.
Just based on what you know about the story and what has transpired after the event happened, what do you think they did as far as the process? Like clearly, like it was so public that they probably went into investigation mode. But what steps do you
Yeah.
think that board took, knowing that like their CPO and CEO, the highest level people, they can't be part of this. They're like they are it. So they're investigating them. What steps did they take?
Yeah. Genuinely, if it's involving those leaders that would typically help the board in investigating or
Yeah.
looking into this, a lot of times they're hiring outside third parties to help
Hmm.
them really ensure that they're doing a neutral and objective investigation. Whether that's an outside HR firm or an attorney partner, given the publicity and situation that involved, they probably recognized quickly that was going to be really important so that they were taking all of the right steps and addressing it from a public relations and perception standpoint, as well as what do we do with this information? How do we look into this objectively and get all the information so we can make the best decision for the organization? And another step that I think they should have take or probably will take is an after action type of debrief of this of,
Yeah.
okay, this happened and it all came to light. Do we have the right policies in place to prevent things like this from happening, right? Do we have a solid conflict of interest policy or a policy that is outlining workplace relationships and disclosure requirements and what that should look like? Because, like you said, it's an ethics issue. It's all kinds of different things looped into one. And so when something this big happens, it's also important to reflect on how did this come to be? And do we not have the right policies, processes, and systems in place to really preventatively look at this and prevent something like this from happening, but also to really clearly hold people accountable if and when it does as well.
I know HR is really supposed to be objective. Knowing the people I work with. I think you guys are all very objective HR professionals, but we're an outsourced model too.
Yeah.
We're consultants, so we often are in an objective role. Now, if you're an in-house HR person like the CPO was, now I'm questioning if there's biases and if there truly is an objective mindset in that
Yeah.
level position, knowing that they're that close to the CEO. What's your perspective on just the in-house versus outsourced HR consultant model?
Yeah. So I've been internal HR before working at Zedium and in this outsourced model that we're in. And it's really hard when you're internal HR because you are ingrained in the culture. And if that
Yeah.
culture is toxic or not the best culture, you do get stuck in that sometimes. And there's like the internal politics within an organization and those really direct power dynamics as well. And so it's really hard, and I don't want to place any blame here on any one person
Yeah.
because there's so much at play here. But power dynamics, all of that impacts a person and how they react and how safe or comfortable they feel in different situations. And it's just a really tough position to be in. And that's why I really love the role that I'm in now in this outsourced model, and that I'm like a huge advocate of it now, because being internal HR, I didn't even like know there was a thing such as outside like HR
Yeah.
consulting that could come in and do some of these things. And I think back to different points in my internal HR career of like how helpful it would have been to have a third party HR consulting person or company to really support me in navigating those challenging dynamics that happen when you're internal HR, and truly give me like this outside, impartial, unbiased
Yeah.
guidance, because that outside person, right, isn't going to get caught into that type of dynamic internally. And there's not like the fear of me as the outside consultant of, oh, my job is going to be at risk internally, or all these retaliation or things could happen to me. And so you can really give direct and impartial guidance, which is so helpful, especially in situations like this. And just really
Hmm.
being a part of changing that toxic culture too. If you do
Right.
have a toxic culture and you're in it, having that outside partner can really help you do a sounding board type of relationship where you can really focus in on how can we change this culture if this is an issue that we're seeing.
Yeah. The stakes aren't as high in my world, but I can just speak to the fact that like I'm an in-house marketing professional,
Yeah.
but have been fortunate enough to have external resources for various things. And those external resources are invaluable because they often will change my way of thinking. When you do things a certain way for so long that you need to get out of your own way, and outside resources can help you.
Yeah.
And also if you're stuck, those resources can help you propel forward in a new way of thinking or support you through a sticky situation such as what we're describing today. So the outside resources are amazing. A combination between the two is great too. Like an
Yeah.
in-house
Totally.
HR department plus external resources, whether it's HR consultants, attorneys, learning and
Yeah.
development professionals, like those are all super awesome resources.
Yeah, and you made a really good point. Like when you're in and day out, it is sometimes really hard to see like how can this be different? What can I actually do to change things? And so that is when that outside partner is really helpful, when
Yeah.
they've worked in other environments or other organizations and can apply the knowledge that they've learned from those situations to your situation. So it's huge. It's a game changer.
Yeah. Because like in the example we're talking about, and I'm sure there's other organizations out there that are just like this, things stew for so long and that becomes the culture, and like it's
Yeah.
not psychologically safe, it's toxic, and then people don't speak up, and then something like this comes to fruition because of that.
Yeah, and then it can escalate really quickly too. As you saw, one kind of small moment that had a lot of visibility completely escalated and blew everything up. And so it's hard to navigate in that space as well once it escalates.
Yeah. So in preventing something like this happening or repairing a culture from the inside out, like what steps would you take?
Yeah, I think first we have to really identify and acknowledge like what are the issues? Is it that there's not psychological safety within the organization? Is it that we have a very like top-down approach to how we're doing things, and that kind of led to an issue like this happening where people feel like they can't challenge authority or say no? Like, we first have to identify what are the things that are happening, that we're seeing, that we're experiencing, that are contributing to these issues that keep popping up. And then once we actually identify what that is, oh, okay, it's psychological
Yeah.
safety, people don't feel safe, then we can more explicitly talk about what do we do to improve that particular piece of things, right? Do we have more open forum conversations to get people's input on things so they feel safe and comfortable getting that conversation going or challenging an idea that maybe they don't agree with or don't like? Do we do that? Do we ensure that we've got an employee assistance program in place if we don't, to have that opportunity to have people get the support that they need or talk through challenges? Do we get an outsourced HR consulting partner to really help give that outside perspective to be able to have another resource for our employees if they're not feeling safe or comfortable with internal HR, with leadership for whatever reason. So I think it's really breaking it down into those bite-sized pieces of what are those issues and then what can we put in place to address each of them, because you can't fix it all at once, right? A culture took
Right.
a long time to get to the place that it is today, and we're not going to change it all right away by just hiring an outside third party or
Mhm.
adding an EAP program, right? But intentionally making those steps over time. It's going to take time to change the culture, but you've got to start now, right? You've got to start as soon as possible, knowing that it takes time, because the longer you wait to do those things, the worse that it's going to get.
This is 3 weeks ago, I think this has happened. Enough time has gone by, the stories
Yeah.
have come out. What's like the one key lesson that you've taken away as an HR leader from this sort of story?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I feel like there's so many
There's a lot
things
of lessons in
that
here.
I've taken away. There's a lot of lessons. For me, I think it's just really it's an uncomfortable situation, and so like us as leaders, as HR individuals, is just being comfortable saying something when you see something. That's, I think, a big saying we've heard in a lot of different contexts. If you see something, say something, right? It's hard to speak up, it's uncomfortable, especially when there's power dynamic, all kinds of things in place, but just, like, reflecting on yourself and deciding, "What can I do in a situation like this to make a difference?" Like, how can I make myself feel more comfortable going to a trusted resource or somebody to address something if you see something that is just not right or doesn't feel right or is challenging your integrity or however you're feeling about it? Do something about it, even if it's something as small as talking to someone that you trust about how you should navigate the situation or documenting what you're seeing in case you need it later. Just try to be brave.
Yeah, said. Nicole, thanks for coming on and talking about this. I know we've been wanting to talk about this for a while.
Yeah.
Thankful that we're able to finally digest this and come up with some lessons and takeaways from this, because I know people will get some value from your ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited we got to chat about it. It's a lot to unpack. And if anyone wants to talk about it more, I'm always happy to talk through HR stuff and what can be done better. So I'm happy to have people reach out to talk to me more about this if they're interested, and how myself or Zenium can support people through stuff like this as well.
Thanks for coming on, Nicole.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Zenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Zenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent, so discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.